What's up, guys? Today's teaching is over reps, sets, rest periods, kind of how to structure your, actual workouts based on your goals, based on the factors we've taken into account already. So this is episode 3 of our mini series. So I'm going to be running through kind of what the main 3 training types are and how to set them up for your goals. So first and foremost, why do reps, sets, rest times, and all that stuff matter? First and foremost, that's going to determine how much time under tension you have. It's going to kind of give your muscles either more stress, more weight, less weight, and in turn your body's going to respond by developing strength if you're trying to strength train, by gaining endurance and enhancing the way that your muscles utilize oxygen and nutrients for endurance-based activities, things like that. So on top of that, higher or lower weight or higher or lower reps is going to, again, change that stimulus your body perceives, which is going to in turn change the way that it adapts and reacts. So and then on top of that, talking a little bit about recovery times and why those are important. So the main 3 types of training are going to be like strength and power, number 1, hypertrophy, number 2, and then endurance, number 3. So talking a little bit about strength and power first, this is going to be, powerlifting, strongman competitions, probably not something that most of you guys are either interested in or are currently doing because your goals aren't around this. This is really going to be, how much weight can you lift one time as quickly as possible. These rep schemes are probably going to fall anywhere between like 1 to 4 or maybe 4 to 6 reps depending on your exact goals. So because of this, sets are going to probably be increased because you're going to be focusing a lot on one specific thing. So the goal, again, of strength or power training is to produce as much power, as much strength as quickly as possible for 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 reps. So again, not something that most of you guys are going to be doing, but the reason being is that that's not going to be what helps metabolic adaptation though. It's not going to be what helps us look lean. That's going to be what's going to make you bulky. That's why all the strongmen you see are rather obese and whatnot. And when it comes into this, the reason I say that sets are probably going to be increased is because rest periods are also going to be very long. So rest periods for this are going to be anywhere between like 3 to 5, maybe even 7 minutes long, because we're going to be wanting to allow our muscles to recuperate as much as possible because you want to be as fresh as possible for that next set, mainly because if you're not fresh and your form deteriorates when you're lifting that much weight, maximal weight for a couple reps, your body's going to be put under a lot more stress. So if your form's not as good and your form breaks down, you put yourself at a very elevated risk of injury. So strength or power training is going to be lower amounts of set or reps, probably higher amount of sets with very long rest periods. So again, not something most of you guys are going to be doing, but I wanted to cover that as well. So talking a little bit about hypertrophy training now, hypertrophy is going to be probably where most of your guys' training falls into place. It's kind of fairly in the middle in terms of reps and sets. So this is going to be, hypertrophy is by definition the enlargement of an organ. Our muscles are organs, if you consider them, scientifically to be so. And we know the benefits of increasing muscular hypertrophy are going to be increased basal metabolic rate, which is going to help us with calories out going up naturally, make daily tasks, activities of daily living easier. It's going to improve longevity, help increase bone mineral density, decrease the risk of all these diseases and, more. So this is probably like your traditional resistance training you hear about. So traditionally our rep schemes here are going to be anywhere between like 8 to 15 reps. I know most of you are in this stage where you probably see, 8 to 12 or 10 to 12 or 12 to 15. So that's going to be, our pretty middle ground of challenging ourselves strength-wise and also having solid endurance, but not leaning too far to one side or the other. 3 to 5 sets per exercise is pretty standard. So if you're one of my clients, you typically see I'll usually do, a compound or 2 first. So something with multiple joint actions is considered a compound movement. So I'll do, 4 or 5 sets of all those and then 3 or 4 sets of isolations and things like that. So when it comes to this, it's going to depend on goals, experience levels, and your ability. But I traditionally shoot for anywhere between like 12 to 20 sets per muscle group a week, if possible. So, giving an example, if your goal is to grow your glutes and you train glutes twice a week, you work out, let's say 4 or 5 days a week, you have a glute centered day twice a week. You could do 4 sets of glute bridges, 3 sets of split squats, and then 3 sets of sumo squats there's 10 sets. That's one day. You do 10 sets of glute focused exercises again. Your second day of the week, there's your 20 sets for the week. And that's going to be a good amount of stimulation given the 8 to 15 reps per set, to stimulate growth in those muscle groups. But again, something like your glutes or your back or your quads that are going to be our larger muscle groups, they can take a little bit more in terms of overall volume, in terms of overall stress. Exercises, stressors, so that's why I quote unquote that. But I, again, wouldn't go past 20 sets a week unless you are very good about recovery, unless you are really, really trying to build that muscle group up. But I think that also kind of diminishes any return on rest period and rest days, because if you're training glutes 5 days a week, your glutes are the biggest muscle group in your body. They're going to need more than 2 days a week to recover on Saturday and Sunday if you're training 5 days straight. So that's why having those 20 sets spread out across 2, maybe 3 days a week is going to be optimal for you guys. So when it comes to rest periods for hypertrophy, I tend to keep my rest periods anywhere between 60 to 120 seconds. Like I mentioned, for those compound movements that are going to be a little bit bigger, where we have multiple joint actions going, so something like a squat, like a bent over row, something that's going to require you to like bend over, use your arms, maybe use your legs a little bit, multiple joint actions. I typically keep those rest periods a little bit longer. I also typically keep those a little bit more strength based. But again, I like to keep things toward the end of my workouts. I like to kind of crescendo down. I start with a little bit higher rest periods, and I like to end with a little bit shorter ones. So typically I'll start with 120 second rest periods for the first 1 or 2 exercises, and then I'll move from 120 to 90 and then maybe down to 60. And then even for burnouts at the end, I'll go no rest. I'll just do AMRAP or supersets. So that way you really kind of take yourself to a point of exhaustion and to failure almost at the end of those workouts. But again, for something like an isolation, like a calf raise or a bicep curl or like a tricep extension where only your elbow is what's moving, I like to keep those rest periods shorter because those muscle groups are going to be smaller. It's going to require less central nervous system integration to actually perform those movements. So I don't think you need as much rest time in turn to get into the next set of your bicep curls, because you're only using one muscle as opposed to squat. You're using hamstrings, abs, upper back, everything like that. So that's typically it for hypertrophy training. Again, this is going to be where a lot of your guys' training falls into play. So I would suggest 3 to 5 reps or sets per exercise, 8 to 15 reps, 60 to 190 second rest periods, and then anywhere between 12 to 20 sets a week per muscle group for a training program of this kind of split. Okay guys, lastly but not least is going to be endurance-based training. So this is going to be anything that's going to be probably between 15 to 20, even more than 20 reps per set. So when we look at it this way, this is not going to be your traditional resistance training, but the goal in this case for endurance-based training is to improve our muscles' capability and ability to use oxygen for longer periods of time and to produce energy without tiring out as quickly. So our first 2 energy systems that work for about 10 to 2 minutes or 10 seconds to 2 minutes are anaerobic, which means they do not use oxygen to produce the main source of energy. When we move into endurance-based training, that's going to be where your sets are going to be longer. Maybe you're doing like a Metcon, something along those lines where you're going for longer periods of time without serious rest periods. That's going to be an aerobic energy producing state. So your body's going to use oxygen to break things down in order to produce energy to keep going. So when we talk about this, our sets are probably not going to vary too much. I would still recommend anywhere between 10 to 20 sets a week. When comparing it to hypertrophy, it's pretty similar, but the main difference is going to be that rep schemes are going to be a lot higher. And because of that, our weights are traditionally going to be a little bit lower. So if we look at it in the sense of you were supposed to do 12 reps for your tricep extensions, you should have been almost to failure for those 12 reps anyways. So in order to do 20 reps or 25 reps for maybe a burnout, or if your main goal is endurance-based training, you should probably be needing to bump the weight down, because otherwise you should have had the weight up when you were going for 12 reps. So rest periods for endurance are going to fall anywhere around that 60 to 90 second range. They could be closer to 0, they could be closer to 90, just really depending on specifics. The goal behind, again, those rest periods is to try to help your muscles and your whole system kind of recuperate, get some oxygen, give the muscles ample time to kind of replenish what they need and allow for recovery so they can work for longer and be ready to go again soon. So When I'm talking about endurance, I'm also not talking about like heavy cardio. I'm talking about resistance training. So things like Metcons, maybe like an AMRAP, anything where you have like 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, or 45 seconds on, 15 seconds off, minute to minute. But I do think that cardio has its place in our training programs. Again, I don't think that cardio should be the focus of a program if your goals are weight loss, strength gains, muscle, lean muscle mass, leaning out, anything like that, because we know, building lean muscle is going to help us with weight loss. It's going to help us increase our metabolic rate. It's going to help with cardiovascular disease control, things like that. Yes, those things are important and you should be doing cardio, but again, it should not be the focus. I think that endurance-based activities are going to be better suited for athletic work, triathlon training, if you're training for a marathon, anything specific regarding a competition you want to do, if you are an athlete. But adding cardio in should be used for the purpose of reducing cardiovascular disease risk, improving cardiovascular health, increasing energy expenditure all around, so getting your steps in, maybe doing 15 minutes at the end of a workout, trying to decrease that gap of calories in, calories out on a cut, for example. But when we go through things like that, that's a different discussion. Cardio is a whole different thing we need to talk about. Hopefully this was helpful, guys. Again, there's your 3 main types of exercise training: strength, hypertrophy, and endurance. Again, most of you guys are going to fall into the hypertrophy stage as lifestyle clients. I've been training in that 8 to 12, 8 to 15 rep range for pretty much the entirety of my exercising career, let's call it. So hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully you guys have a little bit better idea around how to structure your exercise based on your goals. Now we have some examples of sets, reps, rest periods. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to myself or Caleb.